In the shadow of Mount Everest's towering colossus, a tragic tale emerges, that of the enigmatic Sleeping Beauty. As the world's highest peak stood as both an alluring siren and a formidable challenge, her story unfolded amidst the thin air, icy winds, determination, and destiny that took a heart-wrenching turn. Mount Everest usually reminds climbers not to be arrogant or undervalue the power of nature. A person stranded 29,000 feet in the air, where temperatures can plummet to 160 degrees below zero, cannot be helped by technology. Anyone who starts their ascent with confidence is shortly made aware of their difficulties, and the remains of unfortunate ascendants act as grisly markers along the route to the summit. These remains on Mount Everest were left where they fell because it was too risky to try and collect them. They were perfectly preserved in the bitter cold and wearing gear that reflected the many decades in which they fell victim to the mountain's wrath. This is the sad story of the famous Sleeping Beauty of Mount Everest, as narrated by Ian Woodall and Cathy O'Dowd, who were also climbing to the summit when they came across Francis Arsenyev, known as the Sleeping Beauty of Mount Everest. American mountaineer Francis Arsenyev died tragically atop Earth's highest peak on May 24, 1998. Before she passed away while descending from the mountain, she was the first woman from the United States to reach Mount Everest's summit without bottled oxygen on May 22, 1998. Her cause of death, hypothermia, and cerebral edema, may be due to exposure to very cold temperatures for a long time. Born on January 18, 1958, in the enchanting landscapes of Honolulu, Hawaii, Francis Yarbrough de Stefano Arsenyev was destined to weave a tale of extraordinary achievements. A blend of cultures and experiences marked her upbringing as she traversed between the United States and the picturesque lands of Switzerland. After completing her undergraduate studies at the University of Louisville, Francis earned a master's from the International School of Business Management in Phoenix. During the vibrant era of the 1980s, Francis found herself immersed in the lively ski town of Telluride, Colorado, where she pursued a career as an accountant. In this magnetic setting, fate intervened, introducing her to the legendary Russian climber Sergei Arsenyev. The sparks of their connection were undeniable, and in 1992, their lives were intertwined in matrimony. Francis went to Nepal in May 1998 for the Everest Expedition. She had a group, including Sergei Arsenyev, her husband. The first attempt to ascend Mount Everest was attempted on May 20, 1998. They were unable to complete the ascent because, as is typical on the first try, their headlights did not turn on. They returned, gathered their thoughts, and planned before beginning their second trip at the summit on May 21st. Once more, misfortune compelled the two to reverse course after barely 50 to 100 meters of ascent. Eventually, after multiple difficult efforts, they succeeded in reaching the summit of Mount Everest. Francis' achievement made her the first American woman to climb Everest without the help of oxygen tanks. The Mount Everest Sleeping Beauty was Francis Arsenyev, an American mountaineer who perished on the summit in 1998. The multiple weather-related challenges they encountered made the mission challenging. Due to the high gusts they encountered, the team was forced to reschedule their trip many times. They had to stay on the mountain because there was no clear weather. They had very little brain ability left since they were so mentally drained from the lack of air. They had to stay in the danger zone, commonly known as altitudes exceeding 8,000 meters, for a total of 3 days. Another issue was becoming separated on the route to the base camp. After her husband went to the base camp, Francis became disoriented. This time, Sergei went back to look for her while carrying oxygen. They couldn't attempt to pull the body down thousands of feet to base camp because of how high the mountain is, and because they might meet the same end as Francis. She probably wouldn't have survived the arduous voyage to base camp, and it would have been nearly impossible to make it with her. Francis' husband, Sergei, had lost her on the way down. When Sergei arrived at the camp, Francis was not there. Instead of heading back up, he was encouraged to wait and let her visit the camp. He then waited for hours. When he was unable to wait any longer, he stepped outside to find Francis. He searched all day, but tragically, he also perished on the mountain. Sergei was located 1 year later. He seemed to have collapsed like Francis and bled to death. On Everest, the dead are left where they fell, serving as grisly reminders to climbers that nature ultimately has the final say. Whether you have climbed it before doesn't matter. No matter how skilled you are, nature determines whether you scale Everest by the day, the hour, or even the minute. Having been haunted by abandoning Francis and having to look at climber images of the woman for years, a crew was assembled to return and give Francis a respectable funeral. They carried her out of the passageway as she was covered in the American flag. As a result, climbers were unable to locate her and stopped taking pictures of her. The Sleeping Beauty story climbers are familiar with Everest, but more as a warning. Not all stories are uplifting or inspiring. Francis Arsentiev spent several nights slowly dying. Her cognitive capacities were considerably impaired by the lack of oxygen in the high-altitude area. As a result, Francis died as she descended to Mount Everest's base camp. Sometimes they are more careful, and that's what Francis Arsentiev's story is. Her story tells of achieving your goals and the dangers that await them when scaling down Everest. It will never be known for sure what caused her death. High altitude, oxygen deprivation, weariness, injuries, or other factors may have contributed. According to experts, if she had been at a lower level, she might have managed without additional oxygen. High-altitude climbers often refer to this tale as a warning not to set out on their ascent without extra oxygen. An insufficient oxygen supply was most likely a major contributing factor to Arsentiev's ultimate fate. Arsentiev and her husband didn't bring enough oxygen bottles when they embarked on the journey, which, combined with exhaustion from the trek, was perhaps the dominating factor in the Arsentiev's unfortunate fate. As hikers typically experience physical weakness and extreme fatigue near the mountain's summit, Arsentiev may have laid down to rest against her backpack, later finding that she was unable to get up again. A group of hikers from Uzbekistan first found Arsentiev. The hikers tried to help her, giving her a few oxygen bottles as well as carrying her down the mountain. But sadly, all their efforts ultimately failed when their own oxygen became depleted. But they did encounter Arsentiev's husband, Sergei, on the couple's way back and tried to direct him towards his wife. This was the last time Sergei Arsentiev was seen alive. Since neither Francis nor Sergei Arsentiev returned from their journey to Mount Everest, the exact sequence of events surrounding their demise is impossible to know. Many believe, however, that the couple separated after being forced to camp in Everest's death zone overnight. Possibly delirious due to a lack of oxygen, Francis may have left camp sometime during the night. Sergei would then have awoken to find her gone and searched for her throughout the mountains. The crew from Francis was unable to descend due to the severe weather conditions at the peak of Mount Everest. She was forced to spend numerous hours on the summit, which caused hypothermia and frostbite. The Mount Everest Sleeping Beauty was Francis Arsentiev, an American mountaineer who perished on the summit in 1998. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to leave us a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to always be updated with the latest content as soon as it's uploaded. Thanks for watching. See you again soon in another video.